The story of Mauritius is a fascinating one. For much of our history, we are a very young nation, about 40, 45 years old. For much of our history, we were flying below the radar, and people sort of never took much notice of us. When they did notice us, they would normally confuse us with Mauritania or Madagascar or Malaysia. So this kind of being in the limelight now is something quite new to us. And by and large, Mauritius has been able to confound its critics for its 40 years, 45 years of existence as an independent nation. We began by confounding a Nobel Prize winner by the name of James Meade, who forecast in the early 60s that Mauritius was going to the dogs, that the only future left for us, as we were sinking under the weight of overpopulation, was to make for other countries. And we actually set up a Minister of Emigration to try to scan the world to see where there were prospects to take up the surplus labor from Mauritius. More recently, we confounded another critic, another Nobel Prize winner, this one called Joseph Stiglitz. He came to Mauritius and pronounced that Mauritius is a miracle. Well, the truth is that we are not a miracle. What we have done now is the result of slow, patient, hard work. We have never made the headlines because we've never had double-digit growth, but we've had growth which is quite respectable, year in, year out, not too far away from 5%. Now, if you do that over 40 years in a sustained manner, you achieve what Mauritius achieved. We moved from an IDA-eligible country with GDP per capita of less than $200 when it became independent to nearly $8,000 per capita now. We moved from a country that was completely dependent on sugar as a monocrop economy, actually called a sugar bowl island by many commentators, to one that transformed away from that into manufacturing. Now, how do you manufacture when you have no resources to speak of? We don't have any minerals. We don't have anything you can transform. We have to import whatever we transform. So we started by, as an export processing zone at a time when there are very few examples of export processing zones in the world. You had Shannon in Ireland, you had Puerto Rico, and you had the Kaohsiung export processing zone. And we in Mauritius drew our inspiration from that, but added our own twist to it. We turned the whole island into an export processing island. In other words, it became a customs concept. There was no physically delimited zone, which was the EPZ, which what others were doing. So from sugar, we moved to export processing. How do you transform the mindset of an agricultural worker to turn him into an industrial worker with its different regime, which is different culture? We did that by having very inspired leadership, by having very inspired human development policies. We had universal free education very early on. We built on that by having universal secondary education. And then we added to that by having universal free tertiary education. So the despair of Mr. Meade, of Professor Meade, was the overpopulation. That overpopulation now has led us to a situation where we are short of workers. We are now importing workers. So from a Minister of Immigration at the time, we've set up a ministry to process rapidly applicants from outside who are prepared to come and work in Mauritius and to invest in Mauritius. The sugar mentality also had a rent-seeking approach to running economic affairs. So the government had to combat this rent-seeking behavior. We were an economy that was basically built on trade preferences. We were exporting our sugar to the British market under the Commonwealth Sugar Agreement. This was taken over by the European Union under the Sugar Protocol. And so long as Europeans were prepared to pay a fortune to buy our sugar, it made sense to go and producing sugar. But we knew that the market was going to disappear before long. And then the pundits started saying that as the WTO regime kicks in, as the protectionist regimes that we were surviving under were going to be dismantled, Mauritius was going to be the biggest loser in the whole world. And even people here in the World Bank were saying that. We proceeded to confound them again, because then we moved on to the next stage to try to see how we can start exporting no longer commodity sugar, but value-added sugar. So our sugar is no longer plain, undifferentiated white sugar. Now it goes under fancy names, like Muscovado, brown sugar, dark Muscovado, you name it, we produce it. And therefore, we are getting extra value addition coming from a product that was a commodity. We are doing exactly the same thing with our textiles. We are leaving the commodity end, where Mauritian manufacturers are moving away their production chain for that part to other cheaper cost centers like Madagascar, Bangladesh, and elsewhere. And ourselves, we do the packaging, we do the marketing, we do the design, because we've established a good reputation now as a reliable supplier. So the policy approach to all this was very accommodative. We kept changing our approach. We moved away from sugar to encouraging industry, to getting the right supportive policies in place. We had the enabling business environment in place, and we gave the right incentives at the right time. And we are one of the few countries that not only accommodate investors from outside, we actually encourage our own operators to go overseas. And we actually give them incentives to go overseas. So many of our people now are moving to the region. I heard Bob Geldof say that you must think of the region more. We are doing precisely that. Now, if you're a country of 1 million population, 1.2 million, you have to think regional, because there's much less capacity for growth from domestic sources. So we are not a consumer-driven economy. We try to make ends meet by trying to attract foreign investment. We are a tourist destination. Large volumes of tourists come to Mauritius, more than our population, almost. And our policy making is such that we are always trying to think out of the box and to keep slightly ahead of the competition. We live by our wits. So that's what we've done. Where we go from here, well, it'll be more of the same. What the future will bring, what kinds of problems they'll bring, what challenges they'll throw in our way, will determine our response to them. And we've done all that as part of a democracy which has always changed its governments through the ballot box. Elections every 5 years, regularly, multi-party elections, many ethnic groups surviving together. So that's what we've done. That's our formula for success, and we hope we'll continue succeeding.
Doing business in Africa, you can't afford to be without Africa Investor.